G'day and welcome to ReDriven. Now, let's get something straight right away. The cars on this list, they're not the fastest, they're not the best handling, they're not the most capable, they're not even the best performance cars under $15,000. They're just all excellent performance cars that it feels like we've all completely forgotten about. Now, we're going to be sticking with the same rules that we set for our top 5 underrated cars and SUVs lists that we published over the last couple of weeks, the links for which are just up there somewhere. So these cars, they have to be as internationally available as possible. Because the 15,000 Australian dollar budget is a bit tight, they have to show really good reliability, and they obviously have to be underrated. So while we would have loved to include a whole bunch of different BMWs and Mazda MX5s because they're awesome, at this budget, it feels like they're almost the obvious choice, so they're not underrated enough. Also, like the last couple of weeks, even though this list is in numerical order, there is no winner as such. Instead, we've tried to include cars that represent kind of different subgenres within performance cars. Basically, all of these cars are awesome in their own unique way. Anyway, kicking things off, it's the Nissan Pulsar, or the Sentra, or the Sylphy, but a very specific variant. First of all, we're talking about the Pulsar, or Sentra, or Sylphy. Actually, hang on. Look, it's called a Pulsar here in Australia, so from now on in this video, I'm just going to call it a Pulsar. The Pulsar that we're talking about is the 2013 to 2016 year model, and specifically in the STS trim level with the 140 kilowatt 1.6 litre turbocharged engine. And it has to be with the 6-speed manual because the CVT transmission in these things, they suck. They are horrible. Only buy the manual. Now, many of you will be thinking, hang on, isn't the Triple S variant the sportier one? Well, the thing is, the Triple S with its body kit and extra features, it actually ends up being over 20 kilograms more than the conservative-looking STS, yet both share exactly the same engine and the same chassis tune, so therefore, the STS actually has a slightly better power-to-weight ratio. Also, you're probably thinking, how can this little Nissan be regarded as a performance car? Look, we totally understand that this is not overtly a performance car and was designed to be a practical small car with a bit of spice added in the engine department, but we argue that as the Pulsar flies under the radar, trust us, no one is taking a second look at one of these things. You won't have to worry about drawing attention from the boys in blue and therefore can actually push its dynamic limits without fear of losing your license the minute they see you. Plus, it is genuinely enjoyable to drive, and because its dynamic limits are within reach of the majority of us, unlike more focused performance cars that require a racetrack or Formula One levels of driving ability to get the most out of it, you can have loads of fun in the Pulsar the majority of the time. Plus, with a few intelligent tuning modifications, you can turn that fun factor up even more. Just don't buy one with a CVT transmission. Plus, pricing here in Australia kicks off from around about $10,000, leaving $5,000 left over to tweak it to your heart's desire. Oh, did I mention that you shouldn't buy one with the CVT? I think I did mention that. Pretty sure I mentioned it. Anyway, look, that looks after our underrated front-wheel drive, small hatch, small sedan segment. Next up, we've got the all-wheel drive option, and it's the Mitsubishi Lancer Ralliart. Now, thanks to the giant-killing Lancer Evolution models taking all of the attention when it comes to Mitsubishi's performance cars, many of us forgot that this thing exists at all. It's available as a 5-door hatch or a 4-door sedan. It was released between 2008 to 2015, and it was something of a parts bin special for Mitsubishi. The Ralliart's 4B11 turbocharged 4-cylinder is shared with the full-fat Lancer Evo, but this time being fitted with a single-scroll turbocharger as opposed to the Evo's twin-scroll unit. Still, peak power for the Ralliart engine is 177 kilowatts, and peak torque only lags behind the Evo by a barely noticeable 17 newton meters, measuring in at 343 newton meters. Power is sent to the ground via a permanent four-wheel drive system fed through Mitsubishi's twin-clutch automated manual TCSST transmission, while an active center differential, or ACD as Mitsubishi calls it, which was adopted from the Evo 8, can be electronically adjusted to suit 3 different types of driving conditions, splitting torque from front to rear depending on the selection and the surface. Add to all of this that you also receive all of the standard Lancer's levels of practicality, the same long list of equipment and features equipped to the top spec models, and the fact that you're going to be saving thousands of dollars over an Evo 10, and it makes you wonder why so many of us forgot the Lancer Ralliart exists. Actually, you know what? I think that we've all forgotten about this thing on purpose, as it's always been sort of the fast Lancer you buy when you can't actually afford an Evo. But you'll be saving like literally tens of thousands of dollars if you buy a Ralliart over an Evo. Ralliart pricing here in Australia, it kicks off from around about $10,000 and it tops out in the low 30s, whereas an Evo, it's going to start in the low 30s and it's going to top out deep in the mid $80,000 realm. Actually, you know what? We found a 2011 Lancer Ralliart online with just under 160,000 kilometres on it, asking $14,000, whereas an Evo 10 from the same year with equivalent kilometres on it is asking $35,000. So here's a question for you. Is the Evo, is it worth $20,000 more? Let us know in the comments. Okay, next up we're going with our rear wheel drive option, but it comes with a pretty big warning. It's the Mazda RX8. Now, the RX8 is a bit of a weird one, thanks to it being powered by a 177 kilowatt, 212 newton meter, 1.3 litre rotary engine, and the fact that it's an incredibly unique four-door, four-seater quad coupe sort of thing. And look, while it can be argued that thanks to the RX8 having an incredibly loyal fan base, it might not be technically underrated, but many shopping for performance cars at this budget, they generally discount or even ignore the strange Mazda, or they forget that it existed at all. RX8s at this budget will most likely be a Series 1 car from 2002 to 2008, and that's a bit of a shame because the Series 2 cars from 2008 to 2012 are commonly seen as quite an improvement in many ways over the early examples. Now, remember at the start of this video where I mentioned that the cars on this list, they have to show really good reliability? Well, when it comes to the RX8, great reliability is something of a subjective term. Yes, these things, especially the Series 1 RX8s, are renowned for having quite a few gremlins lurking under that sexy body, or bonnet more specifically. Everything from apex seals wearing down quickly, to having an insatiable appetite for both oil and petrol, to issues with ignition coils, plugs and wires, to cooling system problems. Look, if not cared for or maintained thoroughly, can all result in catastrophic engine failure. But the good-ish news is that these problems can generally be avoided if the RX8 has been maintained and serviced ahead of schedule, and if the car has been owned by someone that understands that owning an RX8 requires far more attention than the majority of normal cars out there. The other great news is that if you can find one of the, okay, let's be honest, unicorn examples, few other cars on the used market at this price can elicit the type of emotion that you feel when driving a Mazda RX8. Even just the sound of that rotary engine when you hit the 9,000 RPM redline is totally intoxicating, and the way the car carves through corners is just truly sublime. Experiencing this for yourself, here in Australia, it's going to start at around about $10,000, but you're going to need that extra $5,000 just to keep it running. While sticking to our $15,000 budget, that'll be pushing it to find a perfect Series 1 car, but with some serious hunting and haggling, it can be done. Okay, next up, this one, it's more of a GT car than it is like an outright performance car. It's the Honda Prelude. Like the Lancer Ralliart, the Prelude has always been somewhat overshadowed by its siblings in the form of various Civics and Integras, especially when they are in Type R trim. But the Prelude deserves far more attention, and especially in its final iteration, the 1996 to 2002 fifth generation. That was almost rhyming. My apologies, I'm sorry. From its beginnings way back in the late 1970s, the Prelude was initially something of a two-door coupe version of the Honda Accord, offering a sports car treatment, aesthetic and driving experience alternative to the more luxury-focused four-door sedan. As each generation evolved and found its own clear identity, the final fifth generation is arguably the crescendo to this model's evolution, offering an incredibly enjoyable and engaging driving experience, substantial levels of performance, all while being cosseted in a well-appointed interior. But the 5th gen Prelude was a bit controversial when it first landed. See, the previous generations were far more sports car than luxury GT, especially in terms of exterior design. Many complained that this generation Prelude looked far too conservative and boring. But we argue, like the Honda HR-V in last week's video, the link for which is just up here, the Prelude's design was just simply ahead of its time. Okay, sure, 10 years after its launch, the looks were nothing to write home about, but these days, 20 years on, we feel that it has aged incredibly gracefully, and just like George Clooney, just keeps getting better and better with every passing year. Plus, being a Honda with a good service history, it should offer superb reliability, and being a Prelude, it hopefully won't have been exposed to too many hoons with no concept of mechanical sympathy. And even though manual examples are pretty bloody rare, and is the more enjoyable option, even the auto models are a very decent thing to steer, thanks to the car's superb handling and sports car dynamics. Pricing here in Australia is going to kick off from around about $10,000, and while the Prelude is no rocket ship, we can't emphasize enough how great these things are to drive. My dad actually owns one of these, and every time I drive it, I'm just blown away at how enjoyable it is. Now, before we get to our final option, Look, when we were doing the research for this video, we dug up so many potential cars for this list, and we're considering doing a part 2 of this list. So if you would like to see part 2, let us know in the comments. Oh, also, while you're at it, can you do us a favor and hit those like, subscribe, and bell buttons if you're enjoying this video? And if you're enjoying ReDriven in general, can you share ReDriven as much as you can with your friends and family? Because the more you share our content, the more of this content we can make, and hopefully that's a good thing. Okay, now our final option, or should I say options, because it's actually 2 cars that are incredibly closely related. It's the Hyundai Veloster Turbo and the Kia Proceed GT. Okay, besides the obvious aesthetic differences both inside and out, really the only other major differences separating the Hyundai and the Kia are the Veloster's beam axle rear suspension setup versus the Proceed GT's multi-link arrangement, the fact that the Veloster offers an automatic transmission alternative, and the fact that the Kia, it loses the power to weight ratio battle by just the tiniest of margins. Other than that, both cars are equipped with the same 150 kilowatt, 265 Newton meter, 1.6 litre turbocharged 4-cylinder engine. Both cars offer surprising levels of practicality, and both cars are often underestimated in regards to how much performance they offer and just how enjoyable they are to drive. Look, don't get us wrong, neither the Hyundai or the Kia are like giant killing performance cars, but for what they cost, they offer so much car for the money. Maybe many of us have ignored the South Korean pair due to their respective manufacturers still working hard to shake the cheap and nasty reputation attached to them in their formative years. Maybe the Veloster and the Proceed GT have failed to be taken seriously, as many still see them as pretend sports cars rather than something offering genuine ability and therefore performance car appeal. But spend even a few minutes in either on a deserted winding country road and both will quickly impress. Add to that both cars are showing excellent reliability, maintenance and servicing is inexpensive, both cars are loaded with equipment, they're fuel efficient, and they're comfortable when you're not wringing their necks, and the cost of admission is very affordable, with pricing here in Australia kicking off from around about $13,000. Let's be honest here, if either of these two were wearing an Audi, a Mercedes, or a BMW badge, they'd be the talk of the town. But thanks to so many of us being bloody brand snobs, they've both been forgotten by all but their fans. Now guys, thank you so much for watching, and what did you think of the list? And should we make a part 2 for this list? Let us know in the comments. And remember, can you please hit those like, subscribe, and bell buttons if you enjoyed the video, and if you like ReDriven, share it as much as you can. Again, the more you do of those things, the more of this content we can make for you, and we'd love to keep doing that. See you next time. Now, geez, that was a good start. Cars do have to be reliable. Driving ability to get the best. Gotta remember to breathe. Driving ability to get the most. You bastard. Plus, it is genuine. Did I mention that you shouldn't? That was terrible. You got no room to edit that. I think you can almost see my brain working. The cogs just going. Really, the only major difference separating. Come on. Other than that, look, don't get us wrong. Neither the. My apology. Sorry. Here we go.